The two main reasons I do what I do is because I want to demonstrate a logical thought process to people, because I want to guide the conversation topics around things that make sense. When I talk about a logical thought process, this is kind of what I mean, okay? In terms of like what is logical, right? I'm not trying to use these words to be pretentious. I've got a clear meaning when I'm talking about being logical, okay? So I see a news article, and that news article says that Trump literally, sucked off a Saudi Arabian prince on his trip to Saudi Arabia, okay? So, right, when we view an article like this, okay, well, this is pretty extremist. Let's read the source. Okay, well, the source is The Sun, right? Or the Daily Mail, right? Or Breitbart, or some other tabloid shit, right? Okay, well, this is probably not a credible article. Nobody in the large media spheres are picking this up. Like, okay, well, this is probably bullshit, right? So, like, critically evaluating sources, right, is an important part of forming logical, coherent opinions. Forming logical, valid argument structures, right, is very important. I think that if this happens, effect B, cause A happens leads to effect B. I can empirically show that this happens through data and research, and I want to avoid this, so we mitigate it using, whatever mainstream thought is in either academia or policymaking that will, help to mitigate this factor, right? So say that I believe that immigration contributes to a decrease in native earnings. I can empirically show this with a study from Borjas or somebody else, and then I can, point to say that, okay, well, if we enact these types of immigration restrictions, we can protect, right? These are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. That I encourage people to adopt. When I talk about logical thought processes, I'm not really looking for you to parrot my opinion. I know that it'll happen regardless of me stating this as a goal, and I see it happen, unfortunately, sometimes in my subreddit, but I'm not looking for anybody to parrot an opinion of mine. I'm not looking for anybody to just copy paste what I say. More, I just hope that I can help provide you with the tools to critically analyze sources and to kind of form, sound arguments that make sense, even if we might not necessarily agree on the conclusions at the end of the day, right? And then also, I want to guide topics so that you're talking about things that matter. And when I say talk about things that matter, I mean talk about things that are actually happening in reality, right? So if an immigrant comes to your country and commits a crime, right, that's a bad thing, right? We want to curb immigrant crime as much as we can, but we also want to curb all crime, right? This notion that any crime is too much is absurd. You don't have a native population that never commits crimes. You have no groups of immigrants that never commit crimes. You've got no socioeconomic classes of people that never commit crimes. Why would you expect an immigrant population to never commit crimes? This is not an argument based in reality. Now, if you have people that are disproportionately represented in crime, like a lot of Northern African Muslim immigrants are in a variety of European countries, this is totally valid to criticize. Somebody comes up to me and they say something like, all Muslims commit a ton of crime and they do it more than anybody else all over Europe, right? This is not a good argument because, one, it's demonstrably false. There are types of immigrants, especially Syrian refugees, across a multitude of European countries, Germany especially, that are very underrepresented in crime, right? And the whose crime rates are even falling. And there are groups that are overrepresented in crime, like the aforementioned group, Northern African Muslims that immigrate, especially to Germany. Those are the stats I'm most familiar with. And then I believe it was similar in Sweden as well, right? So these are things that we can talk about. Okay, well, if you come to me and you say, hey, Northern Africans are grossly overrepresented in these crimes, we need to either screen them harder, right? That's a reasonable argument. You want to screen them harder for criminal past, that's fine. Or two, target them with some sort of either enforcement or some sort of rehabilitation, or there's a word I'm looking for, right? Some sort of rehabilitation behavior, some type of target enforcement, some type of preventative measure, right? These are all valid arguments. You've demonstrated a clear problem empirically, which I believe you can demonstrate that, and you are now positing solutions that fix that demonstrable problem. Demonstrable problem? Holy shit, we got a lot of words in here today. So this is my goal, right? This is what I am all about. Okay, what I try to be about. I'm not a skeptic or a centrist or radical alt-centrist or whatever the fuck else, right? Right. These are the only two things I want to do. I want people talking about reality, and I want people forming logical kind of conversations or logical arguments for their conversations. This video is going to be a large recap of everything that kind of happened a few months ago, back in March. So I've been meaning to make this video for some time, but I've spent a great deal of time, both with the help of fans that have emailed me things and a lot of reflection and a lot of listening and reading and basically going over things, because at the end of the day, I have these two goals, and what I need to do is I need to optimize the way that I speak to people to make these goals apparent, right? I want people coming away from my content being aware of those two goals and feeling like I've accomplished something insofar as making progress towards those goals, right? So maybe you listen to Destiny say something like, I've never really thought about it that way before, he sees my point of view, and I can understand his now, and maybe there's something closer to the middle here that's more reasonable. Maybe I didn't need to be that extremist in that opinion, or maybe culture isn't really the greatest argument against immigration, and we need to find more empirical evidence and more reasonable bases to build our arguments on, right? These are the kinds of goals that I have. So the purpose of this video, aside from kind of stating my two goals, right, which I think I've more or less stated a million times in the past, the purpose of this video is I'm going to, it's going to be kind of like a two-parter. Basically, what I'm going to do, got my little outline made right here. I'll probably just publish this. I'll probably throw a paste bin or something in the thing so you can kind of see the outline I'm working on here. It's a lot of shit. Basically, my goal is I want to take everything that happened in March, and I want to kind of just go chunk by chunk and just kind of talk about it and analyze it. That's the second part of the video. I'm sorry. The first part of the video is going to be, I just want to go over a few broad topics, just over a couple things, just so these will kind of guide or give you something to think about for the further conversations, right? So the first part is going to be going over kind of these broader topics, and the second part is I want to break down individually like events that happened in March, and then and I'll talk more about that when we get to that section of the video. So the first part. So let's dig into this a little bit more, right? When I say that I want to guide conversation about specific topics, what I'm talking about is like, I'm talking about having arguments that exist in reality that don't revolve around strawman. So there's a ton of people that have these entire YouTube channels, and all they do, the whole point of the YouTube channel is to build up strawman and tear them down, right? Sargon is a great example of this. Anybody that markets themselves as an anti-SJW is typically a really great example of this. Now, that's not to say that I think that SJWs are in the right on anything, or even a lot of things. Depending on how extreme you want to define SJW, I disagree with them a great deal. But there's a problem when, let's say that I want to attack an ideology. Let's say that I want to attack the idea of women in gaming, okay? Let's say that I think that, let's just start with that, right? So what do advocates of women in gaming think, right? Well, if I run one of these channels, if I run a Sargon or Naked Ape or Mr. Medicure or Kraut and T or whatever, any of these channels, right? I'm not really interested in what they think. I don't care what they think. I don't care what their ideology is. I probably couldn't argue in favor of any of their ideas, which is a fundamentally important concept, right? You should be able to argue in favor or summarize and argue for your opponent if you truly understand their argument, right? If you want to tear it down, you have to understand it. But these people are oftentimes not interested in doing that, right? So instead what we do is, okay, well, women in gaming, right? Well, let's find the most okay. So here I found somebody on Tumblr that says that that 50% of the gamers should all be women in pro tournaments. So they want to kick out half the men and bring in 50% women, even though they can't compete at all, right? Okay, that's a good one. So I'm going to quote that, okay? Now that I've built that straw man up, now I'm going to go point by point on how fucking stupid all of it is. And you see this done in video after video after video after video, right? And if you do this, and I encourage you, right? I know I'm going to get, I know there's a lot of people watching my shit that disagree with me. I'm joking, actually. Most of them have probably already thumbs down the video, left a stupid comment, and moved on. But I encourage you to look for this. When you're watching a video from somebody, and this can be on the right or the left, because both sides fucking do this shit, okay? If you're watching a video on somebody, and you hear them playing a clip of somebody or summarizing their argument, ask yourself, is this really what this side believes? Do you think that people that advocate for women in gaming, do you think they really think that women are at a level where they can be 50-50 with men? Do they really want to knock out, half the guys in gaming in favor of replacement? Is this really an argument they believe? Probably not. Right? So if we start off with the most extremist version of the argument, it makes it easier as a content creator to tear these arguments down. Well, it looks really good when you can throw straw man after straw man on stream and just take your sword and just axe them, just annihilate them over and over again, right? But this is not honest. It's not good conversation. You're not really addressing any arguments. You're just kind of circle jerking with the choir, preaching to the choir, and you're not really converting or swaying anybody over to your side. You're really only grabbing the people that are already on the fence, but heavily leaning towards you anyway, right? And you're definitely not convincing anybody on the other side of any of the shit that you're saying, right? So that's kind of a huge thing that I've seen a lot of the streamers do, and people do it to me a lot too. I don't want to go into that too much now because we'll get into that, especially in the latter half of this video. That's my spiel on strawman things. So a second thing that I have to consider when I do my streaming related stuff, this is something that's kind of always in the back of my mind, is I have to consider personally, like, what is fun versus what is responsible, okay? This is something that is very difficult for me to skirt, okay? Because I've spent 20 years, how old am I, 28? I've spent the past, like, 15 years on the internet, okay? And my early life on the internet was literally in chat rooms with the most vile insults you could possibly think of, right? It was a one-upsmanship. Anybody on the early internet knows this, right? You live and die by your insults, right? So if you hear me making funny memes and funny insults, and I'm good at, making fun of people, right? That's because that's what I did growing up. And this kind of stuff is very entertaining for me, and it's very entertaining for my fan base, but it doesn't always play well into an end goal of informing people to be intellectual people who form logical thought processes and critically analyze scenarios, right? So it's very, very hard for me sometimes to kind of skirt this line between being fun and being responsible. And honestly, I think that it probably changes each time. There are benefits to both sides. I've had some people say, Destiny, you should cut out all of the edgy stuff and be very formal all the time. And I've had other people say, Destiny, you're already way too uptight. You need to go back to your old faggot-wielding self and do all the crazy shit you used to, blah, 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 right? But I think there's a line to walk, right? If I'm trying to stop saying a certain type of word or trying to stop acting a certain type of way, it's usually because I find that behavior reprehensible, and I'm trying to encourage my fans to do it less, right? Or anybody that would follow me that, and by extension following me would, seek to emulate me. The fun part also helps because I think it goes towards establishing my credibility as a commentator in a realm where you don't usually want outsiders telling you how to act, right? If Anita Sarkeesian or Zoe Quinn or Brianna Wu or Randy Harper come in and they say like, hey guys, you need to stop doing all this shit in gaming, right? It kind of leaves a bad taste in me. Like, well, what the fuck? I don't give a fuck what you say, you fucking outsider coming in here telling me how to change the way I fucking act. Like, who are you? Like, who are you to say shit, right? Whereas if I say something like, hey, like I played a lot of fucking games in CSGO, with a friend girl of mine that was, a pretty close friend, and every single fucking game I heard the same jokes over and over and over again, and it's really fucking annoying. This shit, you need to cut this shit out. It's so stupid, right? Being a girl is tedious in some of these, or being a woman is tedious in some of these arenas, right? If I say it, I think it carries a little bit more credibility. Nobody realistically that knows anything about my history is going to say like, oh, that's just some outsider SJW cuck that doesn't, right? No. I mean, I've established pretty hardcore credibility, right? My career has been witch hunted by shit Reddit says types harder than 95% of the people that decry social justice warriors on the left, right? And if you're ever curious to that, you can literally Google like Destiny shit Reddit says, and you'll see like 2 massive threads pop up with 300 plus comments with people not only emailing sponsors of mine, but emailing clients of my sponsors to destroy my sponsors. Like, people fucking hated me, all right? And still do to some extent. I still see a lot of people that don't like me, although these days for different reasons. But yeah, so that's kind of something that I'm always trying to balance in terms of like what's fun and exciting and funny versus what's responsible and conducive to intelligent conversations, right? This is a very difficult line for me to straddle. The next thing, I've kind of talked about this a few times. I kind of just want to get this out in video so people understand what I'm talking about. And we might talk about it a little bit more in the video later on, or it kind of connects together some of these figures I'm talking about. There is a, before I started talking about this, I haven't seen many people mention it, but there's a signal chain that I feel like I've pretty accurately, identified, right? Where you have, like, how do you get gamers and people on the internet, but gamers especially, over to, Trump and populism and I don't want to say right. I'm trying to abandon political labels. I'll get into that in a second, right? How do you get over here? I need to add that. Oh, shit. Sorry. How do you get over there? Wait, right is actually over here for you guys, right? How do you get from this position all the way over here, right? From video games to Trump. And I noticed that this started happening a lot around the time when Gamergate happened, right? So Gamergate happens, basically, I don't want to dive into the whole shit. A lot of people think very different. Some people think that it was originally a movement that was about the corruption of gaming journalism, which to a lot of people it was. Other people think that it was a movement that got hijacked by people that probably just hate women, which is a pretty reasonable assumption at this point, although its roots were noble. But the problem is, what you got was, you got a lot of people in gaming that had specific ways that they wanted to act in gaming. You had a bunch of outsiders coming in, like Anita Sarkeesian types, people that had no business really coming into gaming communities and telling them how to act. And then what you wound up with was this rejection of PC culture, okay? PC culture. So what is PC culture, right? What does politically correct mean? I can't tell you. Nobody can tell you. It means very different things to very, 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 very different people, right? For some people, maybe I say that like black people commit most of the crime in the United States, or they're massively overrepresented in the United States. This is really fucked up. We have to change something. Some people might say that, oh, that's politically incorrect. I don't think very many people would, but some people might say that, right? So some people are like, when they say, I don't like political correctness, what they're saying is I want to be able to talk about things factually without fear of reprisal, right? Other people say, like, I want to be able to joke about, I want to be able to say racial slurs all the time. I want to be able to say nigger, nigger, nigger. And then when somebody calls me out on it, I want to say, hey, stop being PC, right? So in terms of what PC means, I don't even fucking know anymore. I will say that most of the time I say something, I see somebody using the, like, I don't want you to, PC control me argument. It's usually somebody that wants to be blatantly fucking racist, right? That's not to say that it happens all the time, but it's pretty close. That's just kind of like my feeling about it. So with this rejection of PC culture, you get this rise of people on the internet like Thunderfoot, Sargon, Milo Minneapolis, and I'm sure there are other people too, Richard Lewis to some extent, right? These people that not only are they, anti-PC and they're pro-Gamergate and all that, they're also kind of tied into normal politics, but not really, because they don't, at least insofar as like Sargon and Richard Lewis, they don't really know that much. They're not that intelligent, but they kind of are in politics as well. What happens is you get these people that were just anti-PC culture who now see, hey, there are political movements that are also anti-PC, right? That they're against this kind of shit. And now once you've plugged into that, now you've got these people that you can listen to who are, fuck PC culture and pro-Gamergate and blah, blah, blah. And by the way, there are these candidates that are also against PC culture and against, like people that call us racist and xenophobic, fuck these people on the left and fuck them. And now we're pro-Brexit and now we're pro-Le Pen and now we're pro-Trump, right? And you get this really weird thing where you've started siphoning people from like a Gamergate movement into this weird, like, now that you're this populist, right-leaning, nationalistic person, and I find that conversion kind of troubling. I know that the demographics match a lot, right? You've got predominantly white men in the gaming community. White men are usually the people that go for this kind of stuff the most. Maybe it's just demographic crossover, but I noticed that trend in gaming a lot, and that's something that kind of worried me. Maybe I spent too much time over in Kotaku and Action. Maybe it's not quite as representative as I think it is, but that chain is very alarming to me. And I try to disrupt it as much as I can, right? I'm a relatively big gamer, at least on Twitch, and, I know that a lot of people that come and watch me will be very right-leaning in their beliefs sometimes, and I do my best, right? Something that... Oh, I already had this I wrote this, and because I thought I didn't, but then my next thing was this anyway. Personally, I think that all political labels at this point in online discourse should be abandoned. I've never in my life, I just haven't seen a discussion where bringing a political label in clarifies anything. It just never happens. Oftentimes what happens is, this is how I see political labels used. Hey, I believe in X topic, right? I'll use myself as an example. Hey, I think that immigration should be somewhat unfettered. I think that labor markets should function as efficiently as possible. I want labor to move all over the fucking world. I don't believe in restricting immigration. Someone will go, oh, so you're like a liberal or a neoliberal or whatever, right? Oh, okay, wow. So you want to take my guns too? Well, no, hold on. I didn't say that. I'm very pro Second Amendment. I have guns. I enjoy shooting. No, I'm not against it at all. Like, oh, so then you must be like a so you're pro open borders, immigration, and all that shit. Oh, so you're like a libertarian then. You're right. You're like a super libertarian. Well, no, not necessarily a libertarian at all, actually. I very strongly believe in social programs, and I think that things like education and welfare and other types of social spending and redistributive wealth is a really good thing for society. Oh, so then you're like, you see how you play these games? It feels like it ties into my earlier topic where political labels are just used as like a straw man vehicle. Like, okay, well, you said one thing, and I don't even know if I can counter that one thing, but if I assign you with this political label, now I've thrown 5 other things onto it, and I know these positions are fucking retarded, right? No, it's just not good, and I've made a few gaffes in the past where I've done this as well, right? I think I told Sky Williams once for one of his videos that Ben Shapiro was some crazy alt-right dude or whatever. And I didn't really think much of it at the time, but I didn't even fucking realize this. Alt-right people fucking hate Jews, I guess, or most of them do, or some of them do, or whatever, right? People got very upset at me for saying that I was that I called Ben Shapiro an alt-rightist, right? And I didn't even really think much about this at the time. But it's like, oh well, fuck, I guess he's not. He's just I guess like super anti-immigration, super anti-PC culture, super anti all forms of welfare, anti all forms of like social demographics or socioeconomics or anything like that, and just market. And yeah, so that was kind of used against me there when I misapplied a political label. So if you've watched my content at all over the past 2 to 3 months, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've trended away from using labels at all. I just don't think they help. I think it's better to just go issue by issue. Like, what do you think about Sargon? Oh, Sargon? Well, I know that Sargon is extremely anti-immigration, very pro-nationalism, somewhat anti-PC culture, whatever, probably pro-healthcare, right? So, like, you can go, like, step by step, anti-globalism, anti-free trade or whatever. You can kind of go step by step through the policies. I don't think that assigning labels onto people is a good idea. It just seems to obfuscate and confuse and lead towards either defending positions that you don't really have or identifying positions you don't have and kind of tearing down, these dumb ideas. It's just bad, right? I'm trying to avoid doing it completely. The final kind of broad topic that I wanted to bring about before we jump into the specific timeline of everything, this kind of last broad topic is my emotional well-being. I'm only bringing this up because I got a lot of people that ask me about this. Different people approach online communities in different ways. I've said this kind of before in my life, and some people use it as an edgy label. I'm just being completely honest. I'm probably somewhat sociopathic. I very, very rarely get sad or despondent or depressed or anything. I can take a lot of abuse online before it really bothers me. After the JonTron Debate, I think I had thousands of mentions in my Twitter feed of people, lots of personal insults, very personal insults, digging up shit in my past, just random stupid shit. Just as part of the person that I am, these things don't usually bother me. It's just not the way that I function. I appreciate the concerns, but you never have to email me like asking, hey, Dustin, I noticed a lot of people are being mean to you. Are you feeling okay? Like, I'm always fine. Just assume that, right? If I'm not fine or for whatever reason, if it actually does become too much to me, then I'll probably just say like, oh, dude, I'm going to take like a week off Twitter. Like, this shit is fucking crazy, right? But for the most part, and again, I know this sounds fucked up, and please don't assume that everybody does this, because I know that there are popular online figures. Mostly there are figures that don't deal with it this way, right? That like Total Biscuit or other popular online figures. This really bothers. I love the shit posting, and I love the conflict, right? When I've got a lot of people making fun of me and shit, this is just ammunition for me, dude, or targets for me, Like, I can very easily look up a dude's fucking Facebook and make fun of the way that he fucking looks, or I can make fun of his job, or I can make fun of their Twitter history. I can make, right? This is all shit. This is all in good fun for me, okay? And I did as much, especially during the Animator circle jerk, which we'll get to in a little bit, where, find people, make fun of people, make memes, make jokes, insult people. At the end of the day, it's all good, dude. I don't really give a fuck much about it. I hope that nobody that I talk to takes anything very personally, although I know that some of them do, which is funny. I don't really take anything that personally. It's, whatever. It's some of my, no, I can't say that anymore. I was going to say, I've got really close friends that I have big political disagreements with, but as we'll find out later on in this timeline, that no longer really applies to, at least not to Richard Lewis, so, so those are kind of the larger, broader topics that I wanted to get out of the way. Let's get into the second part of this video. Am I talking too quickly? I'm trying not to talk that fast, but I also didn't want this video to be like 3 hours long. Maybe I should do a script. Maybe we need more jump cuts. Fuck. Okay. With this next part of the video, basically what I want to do is I kind of want to go through each event. I want to do 3 things, okay? This is my goal. I've been doing this personally over the past few months. This is kind of what I want to do, like, verbally now for you guys in the video. So 1, I just kind of want to summarize in general what happened with this event. 2, I want to really analyze what happened, like dig into it. And then 3, I kind of want to reflect on how did I respond to this event, right? And then along with that, like, how can we do better in the future, right? This is kind of my goal, my thought process. I hope I remember to do that for each of them. But I've done this personally in each of these over the past few months in terms of like improving how I approach these kinds of discussions. So the first thing that we have. The first thing that we have on March 13th, we have the JonTron Debate. So, wow. Before we jump into this, I want to make a couple things really fucking clear, okay? These are positions that I do not compromise on, ever. I never, ever compromise on these positions, okay? Other people will compromise on these positions. Sargon, Naked Ape, Kraut and T, whatever. All these people, there are other people that will compromise on these positions, but I will never compromise on these positions, okay? 1, I will never, ever wish somebody harm in their job, okay? Because of something that they've done politically that I disagree with, okay? I don't care if you're racist, sexist, homophobic, Catholic, whatever. It doesn't bother me, okay? I'm very big on separating the artist from the art, okay? If you put out funny videos and I think they're funny, then that's fine, dude. Then I'll enjoy that shit, you know? I catch flack for it sometimes, but I think Steve Harvey is legitimately a funny dude. I like him on Family Feud. Anytime I see him doing anything related to comedy, I usually think he's a pretty funny dude. I like his cadence. I like his jokes. That being said, Steve Harvey is a pretty big piece of shit, right? There's that video that floats around Reddit a million fucking times, you know, oh, he hates atheists and blah, blah, blah. You know, well, I'm an atheist, you know, who the fuck cares, dude? People have fucked up political beliefs all the time. I don't think that they should lose their fucking job for it, and I'm not going to pretend to hate everything they do suddenly because I find out their political beliefs. I believe that every human should function this way. I know that it's not I know it's not reasonable for me to assume that. Some people are incapable of doing this, but just kind of keep in mind that there are a lot of people that you like that have probably done shitty things before. I've done a lot of shitty things before. Many of you can find on the internet. And fucking John Lennon even was really mean to his wife before he cheated on her and left her for fucking that Yoko crazy shit, right? But everybody still loves the Beatles and all that shit, you know? Just things to keep in mind. So I wanted to get that out of the way before I get into this because I'm not trying to bring up old JonTron Drama or do anything bad to him. I tweeted as much on the day that I found out that he had lost his speaking position for, I guess, what ended up being a pretty shitty game of, what was it, supposed to be like a Banjo-Kazooie reboot or a Donkey Kong reboot? I don't remember. Or the spiritual successor of. I wasn't okay with him losing his speaking spot there. I don't think that's good. And I think I said as much in the tweet. When you ostracize people for political beliefs, you do two things, or three things even. One, you drive them deeper into their own extremism by putting yourself as an enemy. Two, you deprive them of being surrounded by people that could change their mind, right? I don't want JonTron to be shunned from these communities and then go make a bunch of friends with white extremists. I want John to be doing voice acting and working with people that are Mexicans, that are Arabs, that are Muslims, that are women, right? I want him to work with all of these people because I don't think that you can exist in these heavily integrated communities and still come out thinking, you know, these really fucked up racist thoughts. I don't think you can do it, right? So I don't want John to be driven away from these communities. And then three, fuck, I don't remember the first two. Fuck, I should have made a list. Fuck. The third one was, oh, God, and then the more I try to think about it. The third one was, it kind of goes along, I think, with the first one, is that once you drive somebody away, right, and you ostracize them for it, you drive them into their extremism, and then you ostracize them and don't give them the opportunity to work with other people. Now what they're going to do is they're going to build a fan base of more extreme people, right? JonTron might have lost a lot of supporters when people started ostracizing him for his beliefs, but he also gained a lot of supporters, too, that are much more extreme than the ones that he lost, right? You can see that by pushing somebody away for their political beliefs, you're running contrary to your goal, right? The goal is not to destroy JonTron ever. The goal is to show JonTron, hey, some of the things that you're saying are pretty wrong and empirically wrong even. And I think that they're bad thoughts. And I think that if you exist in our community around our people long enough, eventually you'll start to change your mind. You know, that's kind of like the broad thing of why I don't agree with pushing people away. Whew. Okay. That being said, so the JonTron discussion was about race, okay? The JonTron's discussion was not about nationalism, it was not about culture, it wasn't about people or ancestry or whatever, anything else anybody wants to say. The JonTron discussion was about race. If Sargon or Richard Lewis or any other YouTube commentator tells you differently, they are intellectually dishonest and they are lying about you, okay? So if we kind of look at, I have a lot of tweets and everything to reference here, right? So that I make sure I'm not getting any of this stuff wrong, right? So we kind of look at what the discussion was about, okay? JonTron was arguing that the United States was literally losing a culture war by becoming less white, okay? The picture that we were arguing about the entire time was literally tipping towards a white minority, right? That was the picture that we were arguing about, was the percentage of whites, okay? This was essentially what we were talking about. Not essentially. This is exactly what we were talking about the entire time, right? So let's take a look at some of the tweets that were going around this time. Okay. So firstly, we have a tweet that goes out by Steve King. Steve King says that Wilders, a name I think, understands that culture and demographics, okay, are our destiny. We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. If you go into the interviews and the articles, he also says a lot of other things, like if you take a picture of what America looks like, right, implying whiteness, you know, even when the interviewer tries to give him an out, like, well, America isn't white, right? He sounds like, well, he doesn't even answer that question right straightly, right? And then he's a very big fan of a homogenous America, right? And you can, I think I've got the video, I'll have it linked in that paste bin or whatever below this video, and you can kind of listen to that interview yourself, which I encourage you to do, right? I'm not trying to if you think I'm being unfair with my treatment of Stephen King, then feel free to watch the video yourself and tell me if I've taken anything out of context. I did watch the video, I don't think I have, and I have no desire to, right? But Steve King is most likely racist. I think that we can make that statement with pretty absolute certainty, right? Steve King is probably racist. He's not a very big fan of brown people, or at the very least, he doesn't want these people in his country. He thinks that America should be a predominantly white country, and that whiteness is very, very important to us. The ethno-European, whatever. That's a very important part of our country, okay? So this is the person that JonTron starts to defend, right? Not only did JonTron defend him, he retweeted another guy defending him, right? So Chris R. Gunn, another, I guess, skeptic or whatever, is tweeting, imagine white people go to Asia and say, there's too many Asians here. Let's do something about that. I don't know, man. Just fucking creepy. So this is kind of a strange thing because, one, we're not talking about other countries. We're talking about our own country, right? Who, first of all, if Asia were to come to the United States and tell us to be more multicultural, that's a very weird thing as well. I don't think anybody would be okay with Asia doing it, okay? So firstly, that's a really dumb argument. Secondly, nobody's going to those other countries because, as I just said, that's really foolish and stupid. Thirdly, we're not those countries. I don't want to be like Japan. I don't want to be like South Korea. I don't want to be like any of those countries. I want to be America, right? I like being America. We're the strongest country in the world. We're the most influential country in the world. And we still, for a few more years, have the largest economy in the world, right? Not to jerk myself off. America's got a fuck ton of problems, but for the most part, America's a pretty fucking good place to be. I don't want to try to emulate these other countries. They're not built on the same values as ours, and yeah, I have no desire to be them. So I don't know why. I don't know. These comparisons with the rest of the world are very strange. Unless you're looking for hypocrisy here, which I can understand. But again, people don't come from Japan and go, America, be more multicultural. Like, I don't know. That's just really weird to me. But JonTron retweets that, and then JonTron also adds, wow, how scandalous. Steve King doesn't want his country invaded by people who have contempt for his culture and people. Nazi, right? So we pretty clearly have established like a defense, right, of somebody that's pretty blatantly racist. Looking over a few other JonTron tweets, he says, when he's responding to that Chris Ray Gun, that's exactly it. It's only white nations that aren't allowed to protect their culture, right? French is a culture. So somebody responds to him. People, this is a common trend, and I even do it during our conversation. I'll talk about it a little bit later, I think. People constantly try to throw John a rope here, right? French is a culture. German is a culture. American is a culture. White is not a culture. And then John says, I'll give you that, but they're all white countries historically, right? So whiteness is a very, very, very important thing to John, our Iranian immigrant friend, right? I mentioned, oh shoot, I don't remember, oh god, what was this in response to? I mentioned something along the lines of like minority people have contributed significant amounts to the United States. I think I bring up jazz, I think jazz in general, right? And he says, you're making an appeal to emotion because jazz and bad Thai are sweet does not mean a country should commit demographic suicide. So as a musician, right, as somebody that studied music in college, this bothers me because jazz is arguably, maybe inarguably, America's single biggest contribution to the world of music, okay? Baroque, classical, romantic, impressionism, like all of these things. These are all very heavy European movements, right? These are European. This is where most of music comes from, right? Our understanding of tonality and everything today comes from Europe, right? America took a lot of that, and especially Black America took that and made a whole new form of music out of it. Jazz is American. That's American music through and through. And rock and roll came from jazz, right? You know that fucking that the shit. Every single rock and roll song, right? It uses 12-bar blues, right? Which is a jazz thing, which came from jazz, right? Jazz is a huge fucking contribution from America to the culture of music worldwide. So it really bothered me that he was really dismissive of that. This is kind of an off point. I probably shouldn't have this much. I guess as a musician, it really bothers me that he would be so dismissive of Black people's contributions to jazz. This is another interesting thing. So I mentioned that John wants less brown people and Black people and more white people, and he responds, read into it what you will. No one would ask Japan to become less Japanese. So again, this is kind of an interesting talk talking point, right? Because for him, Japan and Japanese, the country and the ethnicity, are one to him, right? Much the same way that American, maybe in white people, are kind of the same thing. But that's not really what American means, it's a totally different thing. Kind of like Germany and German, right? To be German can mean two different things. You could be German living in the country, or you could have German ancestry, right? You could be Italian in ancestry, or live in Italy and be an Italian, but for American, right? America is a little bit unique there. You can't really be American, unless you're Native American, I guess. Sorry if you're if you're watching this from never mind. Yeah, unless you're like a Native American, right? And then the final tweet was JonTron tweeting that poor white kids are less likely to go to prison than rich black kids, right? Which didn't even necessarily prove his point that they commit more crime, just that they're more likely to go to prison. So the reason why I want to go through all of these things, okay? The reason why I want to establish this is because this is something that drove me crazy after this discussion, okay? Is that after this discussion, following this discussion immediately, a lot of people denied that JonTron was having racist ideas, right? This is a problem for me, okay? Because the whole point of me bringing people like this on a stream and talking to them is because I want to take an idea, I want to critically analyze it, I want to break it down and show and demonstrate how it's wrong. That cannot happen if people deny what you're even talking about. And this happened over and over and over again. Sargon wouldn't admit it. Richard Lewis wouldn't admit it. All the people that were making videos wouldn't admit it. That JonTron was talking about race. Instead, oh no, I thought he was talking about culture, and I think he just slipped up a little bit, and and all the people on Kotaku Connection, oh no, Destiny just tricked him and trapped him and out-debated him. No, this is a conversation about race, and it's very, very, very important that we have this conversation, because how can we possibly show an idea to be incorrect or absurd, even empirically, if we won't even acknowledge that this is the idea that we're talking about? We're not talking about culture. We're talking about demographic suicide. We're talking about less white people. We have to acknowledge these ideas in order to have a conversation about them, right? This is something that drove me absolutely crazy after this discussion, is that it seemed like nobody was willing to admit that this is what we were talking about, even though he kept going over and over and over and over and over again, right? And even when I tried to give him an out, he would go back to it, like I think I can demonstrate this pretty clearly. What do you think? What if a million or 100 million Mexicans came to the United States and immigrated immediately? And he's like, I guess that would be okay, but normally that doesn't happen, right? They would integrate into the gene pool, right? What does that mean? Or when he's talking about blacks in the United States, and then he's like, blacks have problems in the United States. Well, what about blacks in Africa? They have problems too. Is it all unrelated? Like, what do blacks in Africa? First of all, Africa is probably the most genetically diverse place on the planet, because it was only a small subset of people that left Africa, right? And then genetically diversified from there, right? So Africa probably has the most genetic diversity on the planet, firstly, right? And secondly, why are you trying to compare black people in the United States to black people in Africa, right? Do you really think there's a genetic basis? Even if there is a genetic basis, you're already off point. Is it a skin color basis? Is it a race thing? Right? Like, this is such a weird thing that you would bring these things up, and then people would still say that like, oh, well, this wasn't a conversation about race. It was a conversation about race. Man, when people deny that, it really bothered me. When I talked to JonTron, there were a couple things that he was really misinformed on. I don't know how relevant these are anymore, right? He says that all discrimination has been eliminated. That was pretty stupid. He said that Irish people were probably considered white. This is obviously not true. People born after me aren't affected by Jim Crow. That's demonstrably false, right? Generational wealth is a very real observed economic phenomenon that you can go and read a million things about. I guess so. If I look at the JonTron debate, this was my first, this is kind of like one of our big, large debates that we've had recently where I'm not too happy with my performance. I think that one of the problems that I have, so we've summarized what happened, we analyzed what happened, we're reflecting now. How could we have approached this better? I think that I was needlessly aggressive in a lot of my conversations, and I do that a lot. I get very aggressive. There are certain things that I consider to be almost self-evident in terms of how obvious they are, and not everybody shares that same belief. And sometimes I get very, very, very upset, and it's hard for me not to shout and scream, and I start to move and wiggle, and it's very, very upsetting for me to talk to some people. But that's part of my responsibility to you guys, right, as an audience, is to maintain a respectful demeanor, a calm demeanor, right, and to very slowly walk through, analyze, and break down their arguments and show them, where I think they may be wrong, or at least guide them into a better argumentative territory. I think that for the most part, my convo with John was okay, but again, I could have backed it off a lot, I think, and been a lot more chill in terms of how I approach things. Not asking questions like exasperated, like, do you really believe that? Like, instead of being so exasperated, like maybe, in a more calm way approaching things, right? I think I could have handled that conversation a lot better, maybe in such a way that where he wouldn't hate me now. I don't know if he does or not. But also maybe in a way that would have made it a little bit harder to attack me based on superficial things, although I'm not even sure that would have mattered. But yeah, okay. So this was the JonTron discussion. Shortly after that, let's see. I had a conversation, a quick one with Sky Williams that happened after. There's really not much to talk about there. We talked a little bit. It was just kind of a circle jerk. Oof. In the chorus of all of this stuff, a lot of people are making videos about me, and a lot of people are sending me messages to talk to me. So for the most part, I'll always accept this kind of stuff. I like debate. I enjoy it. It's one of two things happens. Either one, I get to jerk my ego off because I'm correct, and I get to show people how correct I am, or two, I'm wrong about something and I get to go and read shit that I didn't know about, and then I get to evolve on my positions, right? If I believed in a certain thing and it's demonstrated that I'm incorrect, well, now whatever I go and I read about, well, now I will have the correct opinion, right? I consider both of these to be equally positive to me. Against the warning of one of my fans, I was contacted by a guy called Naked Ape to do a debate. This was a fucking disaster. This was probably the epitome of bad internet argument. So one concept that I become very familiar with over the past few months is this idea of arguing in good faith, right? I want to interpret what you're saying as charitably as possible to give you the best position possible so that we can work on our ideas rather than getting caught up in semantics or gotcha moments, right? I'm not really interested in like trying to nail you down and totally own you on a point, right? I want to understand what is your idea. I need to know what your idea is and then show you why I disagree with that idea. I'm not interested on catching you on a particular moment. Naked Ape, on the other hand, was very interested in gotcha moments. The entire conversation pretty much centered on him trying to you did say it. You didn't say it. Yeah, right. This very, very, very egocentric. Like, I'm not worried about your self-flagellation. Very, very weird. I should have known maybe from the start. I think he opened that conversation joking about how edgy he was because he kept getting banned from a Discord server with racial jokes or whatever. This was a conversation. So what did I wrote here on my notepad. If a guest is constantly mischaracterizing what I'm saying, I need to remain calm and rephrase as clearly as possible. Insulting people is probably not good, though fun. So in my conversation with Naked Ape, eventually it devolves into a shit show right after, shut up, where he's like screaming at me. This was a conversation where I think that if I could have maintained a calm demeanor, I think I could have come out looking really good instead of just two people screaming at each other. This is one of those things where I think you have to approach it sometimes like kind of like a parent-child thing, to where I kind of approach things as like a child-child thing, right? Let me flex my transactional analysis here, right? To where if somebody starts screaming at me and acting like a kid, sometimes, well, fuck it, let's do it. Like I like to jump into the mud pit and scream back, right? It's a lot of fun for me, but it's not good. Remember that earlier conversation about fun, what is fun versus what is responsible? Insulting somebody, making fun of somebody, and shit-talking them is a lot of fun, but it doesn't always work out well, right? It's not conducive to a positive conversation. Oftentimes, it'll make you look bad in the eyes of your opponents and even in the people that support you. So, in this particular circumstance, I think this would have been a really good test on like, can you remain calm in the face of somebody that is constantly trying to mischaracterize your arguments, constantly trying to play the gotcha moment card, and like screaming you down the entire way. This would have been a really good practice of that, but I was really, really bad at it. I fucked myself in how I handled this conversation, and I definitely wasn't going to get any help from Naked Ape about it. So after this happened, around this time, I believe that Sargon, of all people, started clipping things out of my YouTube video and posting it on an alternative channel, okay? This really bothered me, okay? Because Sargon had just recently made a video about how horrible the character assassination the Wall Street Journal did of PewDiePie. This is a very, very, very important part of the video, okay? One of the reasons why we don't like social justice warriors is because they engage in character assassination a lot, okay? I think that's a valid criticism of social justice warriors. Let's say you've got a guy that says faggot all the time. An SJW will not say, hey, I don't think you should use the word faggot. Sometimes you can promote homophobia by doing that. The social justice warrior will say, hey, you're homophobic. Stop. Hey, why do you hate gay people? Hey, I know that guy. He hates gay people, right? This is not good, okay? You have to be able to distinguish, somebody acting in a dumb way versus them legitimately being, like, racist or bigoted or homophobic or whatever, right? This is a very, very, very important distinction to make. Because when you approach someone and you say, hey, I think that when you say these words, I think that you, unintentionally, you can cause these kinds of feelings to come about. Maybe we should find ways not to do it. That's going to play out a lot differently than, hey, you're fucking homophobic. You need to fucking stop right now or I'm going to fucking destroy you, right? So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because for a community full of people that are so upset when SJWs mischaracterize them and character assassinate them, it seemed like every single fucking person on the internet that was part of these communities were very quick to do it to me. It was very, very, very disappointing. Sargon cut 4 clips from my YouTube channel. He took 4 videos verbatim without any added commentary, without any added editing or anything. He just threw up straight clips onto an alternative channel who he tried to misrepresent me on 4 positions, on 4 ridiculous positions. Now, remember the broad topics we talked about earlier, how easy it is to mischaracterize an opponent, to put them into a straw man position and then make them look bad? Tell me if these positions sound like anything that I sincerely believe in any of the time you've heard me talk before about anything, okay? Oh, fuck, I don't think I wrote down exactly what... Oh, fuck, I didn't write down exactly what they were. Let me see if I can remember them. So one was, in the context of me talking to John, he said something about how everybody on my side was communist. I was comparing that a lot of people that are Nazis literally are agreeing with what he says. He said, what about the communists on your side? And I got very confused for a moment because I hadn't heard that in a long time. So my mom, and I said some shit like, what's wrong with communism or whatever? And I was kind of pointing out that communism is more of an economic philosophy rather than Nazism, National Socialism, which I believe has racial elements baked into it, right? So you can probably take issue with me saying that communism is an economic thing because to some extent in communism it's kind of implied violent revolution and all of that shit, right? Which is a fair criticism, sure. That being said, I am not a communist. If you've listened to me talk, I very much have the capitalist cock rooted firmly down my throat. I'm a very big believer in markets. That's where a lot of my views on immigration comes from. I'm a very big believer on keeping these markets functioning as efficiently as possible. This is why I'm pro-globalism, okay? And this is why I'm generally anti-minimum wage. I didn't like Bernie's $15 an hour thing. I'm very pro-nuclear power, right? I'm a very big proponent of capitalism. So when Sargon clips a 30-second thing and says, Destiny thinks nothing is wrong with communism, or Destiny, quote, what's wrong with communism, right? This is a pretty bad representation in my view. On another part where I'm arguing with John, I bring up something along the lines of like, you say that immigration is bad and destroying everything. Why is it that California, a state that if it was a country has to deal with the second most immigrants in the world, right? Why is it that California is doing so well? Why is California the strongest economy in the United States if it has to deal with so many immigrants? This doesn't make any sense. And then Sargon clips that clip and says, Destiny thinks Mexican immigrants are running Silicon Valley. Firstly, I think it's funny because Sargon demonstrates that he doesn't know that California has a very diverse economy, which agriculture makes it a decent chunk of, and he thinks that all of it comes from Silicon Valley. It doesn't. And then 2, I never said that. Come on, that's ridiculous, right? Another thing JonTron brought up was that there are riots happening all over in Europe, right? And I said, there aren't riots happening all over in Europe. They do happen. They have been happening. Europe is a massive fucking continent, though. There's a lot of people. I don't think that a few riots count as riots are happening all over Europe. Like, all of Europe is in flames, right? Sargon clips that, 30 seconds, and says, Destiny thinks nothing is happening in Europe. And I remember. And the final clip was JonTron talking about how somebody said all white people should shut up, right? And I've seen this clip before, and you can go and look it up if you want. Just look up all white people shut up, and you can find the speech. Basically, this was a woman talking about how minorities face certain issues that white people don't understand, and sometimes it would be good if white people would just be quiet and listen to minorities that face some of these issues, right? You have to listen to minorities to understand some of these issues, right? Which is a valid point when you see the kind of people that exist. I think that's a valid point. And, Sargon clips that when I'm talking to JonTron about it and says, Destiny thinks all white people should shut up, which is kind of funny considering I am white and talking to another white guy, and I obviously think both of us should be talking because I'm streaming it, but, yeah. So I DMCA these clips, right? Fuck that, dude. Firstly, legally, so let's talk about this real quick, okay? Legally, I'm in the right. anybody that says differently is wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. There is no fair use. There is no transformative bullshit, period, okay? Firstly, fair use is a defense you use in court, okay? Fair use is not a blanket thing that absolves you of all copyright claim. That's not how that works. Fair use is something that you argue in court in front of a judge or jury to show that you are correct. So legally, I'm 100% in the clear. Sargon did not transform my media. He added a different title to it, but that's it. The videos themselves were straight ripped from my YouTube channel and then posted on his alternative channel, okay? In order to mischaracterize me and attack me, right? So legally, I was in the right. Morally or ethically, fuck him, dude. How are you going to take these clips of things that you know I don't believe just to try to make me look bad? Why can't you address any of the meat of my argument? And this is going to be a trend that I'll probably talk about in the rest of these situations too. Nobody anywhere addressed any of my arguments, of my actual arguments, right? That I was, proposing to John. Instead, everything was straw man. It was taking out these little clips, digging up shit in my past and trying to character assassinate me. Nobody really made a comprehensive video of, here is why I disagree with Destiny thoughts on immigration. Instead, it was like, Destiny's a massive communist. Destiny wants to bomb Mexico because of a conversation I had with Mr. Medicare a long time ago. Destiny loves Islam. All these really, really, even though I'm an atheist and I hate pretty much every religion. But yeah. So the interesting thing about this was that Sargon, this is something later. So yeah. Okay, so I'm just going over it. Sargon put these clips out. I DMCA'd him. I think he tried to get me by re-uploading them on Twitter, and I DMCA'd them there as well. And all of these clips were taken down. This will be important later on in the video as we move through the timeline. All 4 of these DMCAs were filed on March 14th. I filed 4 DMCAs for 4 videos, okay? I filed all of them on the same day, the same time at March 14th, okay? Yeah, and looking back on that, I stand by what I did. I have no regrets over DMCAing that content. Fuck him. Fuck him for doing that. Fuck him for mischaracterizing me. Fuck him for being a massive fucking hypocrite. And then fuck him for abusing my intellectual property. I had a lot of people so I wrote in here the mouthy Buddha guy. There are a lot of people in this guy's video. He starts off this video with like his suit. He's like, and then he like sits down. It's really fucking dramatic. I think it's linked in the paste below. It's really dramatic. But I have this is a guy who makes a 5-minute video shitting on me, and I tweet out, I was like, hey, do you want to come on and chat about your video? In that 5-minute video, he mentioned Islam for all of 5 seconds, and then he responds back like, the only way I'll talk to you is if it's on my terms. I'm not going to let you bully me around, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll talk about, you can come on and we'll chat, and you can lead the conversation. He's like, I only want to talk to you about Islam. Like, what? Firstly, Islam was a really small section of your video, and I don't even know, I barely talked about Islam at all with JonTron. Why do you want to center your whole thing of that after making a hit piece video, right? I thought that was very strange. And then obviously he ended up dodging that discussion. His video contained so many factually incorrect statements. He said that countries that take in less do better versus countries with more immigrants. I don't know what he means by that. He didn't link any sources for anything. And he also says that Destiny hates white people. That was pretty funny, but yeah. I think I extended an offer debate. There's not much I could do there. So for reflecting on that, I don't think there's much more we could have done. That's fine. I had a 3-hour discussion with Thorin, which apparently meant fuck all because I guess he still really hates my political shit. But, we had a 3-hour discussion. I thought that we'd made peace, but now as of recently, I'm not sure if that's true anymore. There's nothing too much to discuss there. Had a discussion with another YouTuber called NoBullshit over a video that he made. That guy was a fucking idiot. I talked with him once. I don't usually say this, but I pretty thoroughly destroyed him, right? His talking points were really dumb. And then he actually made a second video saying that he had destroyed me, which is really funny. You can go and look for, I think it's like NoBullshit Destiny. I think the debates are up on my channel. They're pretty hilariously stupid. There's not really much to talk about there. Moving on to the second conversation, Sargon of Akkad. So this is one that I want to talk about a little bit because I think I made a lot of errors here. Sargon of Akkad does a couple of things. So, one, Sargon of Akkad is not very intelligent. He has a very poor understanding of how to do critical analysis of sources. He oftentimes doesn't read the entire source before he starts to talk about it. He's very big on clipping headlines. He's very big on straw-manning people. He's very big on getting the most ridiculous opinions. He's also very bad at understanding how his opposition thinks most of the time. And then, in general, he's very, 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 very hardcore set in his particular type of believing and very biased in that belief as well, right? He'll find sources that agree with him. He'll kind of ignore, he's not very critical of sources that agree with him. He's very critical of sources that disagree with him, this kind of a thing. And if you've watched if you watched the Sean and Jen's channel, you've seen like a big takedown of a lot of the really dumb shit that Sargon says on his YouTube channel. That being said, okay, I think that Sargon, he is a somewhat reasonable person, at least to talk to. And I think that in talking to him, I think I could have done better. I think that if I would have remained calmer and thought more, I just accused Sargon of being very set in his ways and strawmanning his opponents. I did that to him a little bit in our discussion, or rather, I didn't take enough time to properly enunciate his view so that I could understand it. One thing that I did a lot when I've been having discussions somewhat recently with that the JF guy, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, is this restating of your opponent's position. Like, okay, so you believe in this thing, and then after they agree that restatement is a fair summarization of what they said, then I will, proceed to attack it with my argument. I think I could have done that a lot better with Sargon. I needed to, one of the things that I've taken away from my discussions, and his was the largest one. I had somebody send me a huge document. I might even link that down here, a huge document breaking down and analyzing my discussion with Sargon. One of the things that, this is one of the conversations that I could have done a lot better in, I think. I do believe that I was in the right in most of what I was speaking of, but I didn't do a good enough job understanding his point of view, speaking it back to him so we could agree that his point of view was what I said it was, and then attacking it from there. I think I could have demonstrated the flaws in his thinking a lot better. The really dumb correlation, causation around, like the marriage shit and stupid shit like that. I also think that if I would have been calmer, I could have... I could have addressed more his mischaracterization of my economic beliefs as well. He kept constantly saying things like I wanted to fuck over the little man when I would constantly tell him how I didn't want to, shit like that. I think that I could have had a much more productive conversation with him had I been a little calmer and been more strict in trying to interpret with what he was saying and being charitable and rephrasing it back to him. I think that this was a very, very, very poor showing in general of how our arguments should be. But I learned a lot from it, so. I'm not going to dive too much into the specifics of that. It's been talked to death. So from the Sargon discussion came the Animator Drama. Whew. I think I've got this and then a few other topics. The Animator Drama. So Psychic Pebbles is somebody who probably has been mad at me since the JonTron Debate. This is kind of a trend, too. There are a lot of people that after the JonTron Debate were very miffed at me. They didn't come out and explicitly defend JonTron, but they came out and criticized me as much as they fucking could have, and they were very wishy-washy on JonTron statements. I'll get into this more when I talk about Richard Lewis next, okay? So Psychic Pebbles is a guy that does animation on YouTube. Really, really good animation. Him, Ego Raptor, and a couple guys like pioneered, I think, way back on Newgrounds, like a certain type of animation style. He did some of the Hellbender stuff on YouTube. I love his animation. I think it's really fun, and I really like all of his work. That being said, holy fuck do I fucking hate this piece of shit. So in the course of me talking to Sargon, at one point in our conversation, we got into a discussion on blue-collar labor or something, right? And my position was something along the lines of, like, blue-collar labor sucks, nobody generally wants to work it, and people normally aspire to higher types of jobs. So when I'm talking here, this is something where clarification could have helped. When I'm talking here, what I'm generally talking about is that blue-collar jobs, I'm talking about hard manual labor jobs. I'm not talking about being an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter. Not that these jobs aren't hard. I'm talking about like framing or bricklayers, right? I'm talking about really hard work or like retail or frontline service positions, right? Not that those are blue collar, but I'm talking about shitty jobs that can have a long-term detrimental impact on your health. And when I say long-term, I mean like you're in your 30s and you have back pain for the rest of your life, right? So I'm talking about long-term damage to your health, oftentimes shitty pay, more often than that, very bad benefits. You're not getting, sick pay or, time off or vacation. And then other types of benefits are often really bad. There's oftentimes, low chance of promotion or any kind of vertical mobility. And these are typically jobs that you don't want to work. Never in any of this, and I guess I can understand how you could have taken from this, but I never meant to imply that, blue collar workers are embarrassed about their work or blue collar workers aren't proud of their jobs, right? This is a pretty absurdly stupid statement to make, and I would never make this statement. It's really dumb. You should be proud of any job that you work ever, right? Even if it is a lower level or not as well paying job, you should always take pride in your work. It is your work. It's an extension of yourself. If somebody walks by and they see a job that you've done, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. It's going to reflect on you. Don't let it reflect on you poorly, right? These are pretty obvious things. So with that being said, backing up a little bit, Psychic Pebbles has kind of been tweeting a while before my conversation with Sargon, even back on March 12th, where Psychic Pebbles is tweeting shit like, I'm not talking about murder. I'm talking about outbreeding. Would you be okay with this? We were talking about, I think, about white genocide. Psychic Pebble saying, would you be okay with Ethiopian culture being preserved if Ethiopia became 100% white? I'm asking if you'd be okay with it. This is where the outbreeding thing came from. So like, and I'm not passing arguments on whether or not he's right or wrong. I'm just kind of showing like he's been very involved in this kind of discussion. Before I ever started talking to Sargon. So in the course of me talking to Sargon, Psychic Pebbles fires out a tweet, something along the lines of like, and then after I DMCA'd Sargon, Psychic Pebbles also tweeted at me saying, what did you think was taken out of context? And then I said almost every clip was taken out of context in regards to the Sargon clips. And he says, I was understood, just trying to figure out what was removed since your views on Europe were consistent in stream, right? So after the Sargon discussion, right, and after we now see that Psychic Pebbles has been involved in this since JonTron and me had our big discussion, in the Sargon discussion, we talk about the blue-collar stuff. Psychic Pebbles fires out a tweet. What the fuck is Destiny talking about in this debate with Sargon? Every physical labor worker I've talked to is proud of the work they do. Okay. Now let's analyze this, okay? Because from this point of view, I get very, very, very upset, okay? He says that, and yes, growing in the Midwest, people do aspire to jobs like that. People also aspire to go to the military. Just because this Twitch streamer vacuumed carpets for a year thinks he can speak on behalf of every bricklayer and painter, fuck off. Just because you look down on the physical labor jobs and don't want to not play video games for a living doesn't mean everyone else does. So, the problem that I have here, let me explain the way that I interpreted this, okay, is that generally, I think it's fair to say that people in general don't want to work these jobs. Not because there's no honor in it, not because there's no pride in it, not because it's a looked down on job, but just because typically the pay sucks and it's really backbreaking work. It can be really hard on your body, and the benefits and everything are usually pretty shit, right? It's better to do a trade or to get educated and do, degree-related work. In general, I think that's a fair statement to say, right? So when I see that somebody who makes a living drawing pictures or animation or playing video games like a Twitch streamer or on YouTube or something, when I see somebody like that making statements, right, somebody in a very, very, very cushy privileged position making statements like, whoa, what? Everybody that works blue-collar labor loves blue-collar jobs, right? That really, really, really bothers me because I don't believe that that is true. I think that most people, if they had the opportunity to, would take cushier jobs that are probably easier on their body with higher pay. I fired off a pretty impassioned clip after that. I was probably pretty on edge because I think I did this right after my Sargon discussion. I fired back a pretty spicy Twitch clip back at him, something along the lines of like, I don't want some idiot that makes $250,000 a year on YouTube, telling everybody, all the blue collar workers or whatever, that they are are thankful to be doing their work. It came off to me as like a really privileged statement. So, okay, I fired off that clip. Now, I've talked about a lot of random shit, and this is kind of where it all flows in together, okay? So, I think when I did that, okay, I'm just kind of guessing here, but I think it's a fair guess, right? So, Psychic Pebbles had already been on JonTron's side before this, okay? I think that there were a lot of animators that were out there that were very upset with me, but couldn't come out and, really defend JonTron's statements because they were probably fucking abhorrent, and they didn't really all want to come out and attack me because it kind of looks bad, but when I fired off this tweet, or when I fired off this kind of Twitch clip at Psychic Pebbles, every motherfucker in the animator community came to rise up against me. We have Psychic Pebbles, we've got Ego Raptor that came out and made some retarded tweet about how like, oh, I worked a construction job for 3 months and now I do animation full time. I think the animation is much harder, right? Ego Raptor from Game Grumps, that Sky guy, I'm not even sure who that is, Rubber Ninja from Game Grumps, Critical, a guy whose videos that I love, Tomska, Rice Pirate, Tahada 101, Chris Rick, basically all of these fucking people, Oni and G, the one guys from Bro Team, all of these people came out to tell me, Shadman, the guy that draws kitty porn or whatever, or basically all of these people came out from the animator community to shit on me. What Psychic Pebbles managed to do was, So when I had made that insult at Psychic Pebbles and he made $250,000 a year, I assumed that because I looked at his channel real quick and I saw that he had like 900,000 YouTube subs, right? Anybody with 900,000 YouTube subs is probably making $500,000 a year, right? I didn't know that that all this other shit was going on and he doesn't make any money on his fucking YouTube because he's fucking retarded, okay? I had no idea at the time. Well, Psychic Pebbles took that statement and he made it sound to everybody else like I had said that every single animator was making $250,000 a year, right? He made it sound like that's what I thought everybody was saying. And then so basically what he did was he reframed this argument to say, oh, Destiny thinks that every animator makes $250,000 a year. Well, everybody go get him, right? More or less. And it sounds like I'm kind of playing the victim card here, but holy shit. There were a lot of fucking animators that came out that went fucking crazy. And I have to spend like I think half the tweets that I fired off here were like saying like, yo, I didn't mean every single animator, and I didn't even mean Psychic Pebbles as an animator. I meant Psychic Pebbles as a YouTuber probably makes $250,000 a year, or at least he should if he's got that many fucking subs, right? But holy shit, dude. I got so many fucking people tweeting at me. This was some crazy shit. In kind of, so this is kind of the summary and the analysis. So I wrote this sentence down here in this pastebin, or it'll be in a pastebin right in my notepad. Twitter is a very hard platform to express a point on. People who are maliciously misrepresenting you will always win if they are appealing to a certain narrative. You need to hardcore refine your messages. I'm still not sure how to engage with someone who is only interested in assassinating my character plus bringing up hardcore personal attacks. Oh, yeah. In all of this, I'm not even sure how it came up, but Psychic Pebbles decides to make fun of me for having my dick on Twitter and make fun of me for the fact that my best friend killed himself when I was in my early 20s, because somehow this is relevant to our conversation. And this is something where when I reflect on this, so this is a situation where I stirred up the hornet's nest, like 2 days ago, and they all are just looking for a reason to get me, and I gave it to them by slipping up. In looking at kind of like how this whole animator drama went on, I don't really know if, I don't know how well I could have played this out. I guess I probably, like, do I just ignore everybody on Twitter? Like, this is a guy, Psychic Pebbles, clearly wanted to fuck me, right? And he was going to take any possible thing I gave him, right? If it wasn't this, he would have been hanging on my every word for, like, the next week until I said one thing that he could get me on, right? Or at least that's the feeling that I had. And I'm not really sure. I think that there was a big post on, like, GamerGuys, another subreddit, and I made a big response to somebody there in terms of how I felt, and he even showed up in that Reddit thread to come and talk back to me. I don't know if I've got it linked in here or not. No, I don't think I have. I don't know what the original link that Reddit thing. You can probably find it in my comment history or whatever. But I'm not really sure how to deal with, because I corrected him multiple times. I said, yo, dog, when you're making $250,000 a year, I was assuming it off your YouTube. I don't know fuck all about your animating business. I never said that animating was easy, although I think later on when I was shitposting, I might have said that. But yeah, he was like trying so hard to reframe every single fucking thing I said into this like attack on all animators. I'm not really too sure how to how to deal with people like that. Yeah, I'm sorry, fucking saying a lot. This is something that I'm still working on. If there's somebody that's deliberately like out to get you, I don't really know. Do you just avoid, how do you identify them? Because you have to identify them. And then how do you avoid that? I guess just the thing that I've got kind of wrote here, you have to be really on point with your message. If you see that anything is being mischaracterized about you, I think you have to back up and you have to clarify that point in every single fucking tweet until people understand that. I think I should have stopped that right there, that conversation, and said, dude, the 250K was about your YouTube audience, not about being an animator. I should have stopped and said that like a million times. But it was pretty sad that I missed up there, because every single animator got to come out and get revenge for their buddy John, I guess, and then put me in my place. The next thing I have is the Maddox circle jerk. There wasn't much to talk to there. We just kind of circle jerked for a little bit. I got to talk to Maddox, which is really funny because he's like one of my fucking childhood heroes. Or maybe not childhood hero, but like I read all of his articles and shit growing up. He's one of the few people that I thought was really funny growing up. I have the final kind of event that happened was the Richard Lewis discussion. Or not discussion, because we never actually had a discussion. Richard Lewis was somebody else similar to Psychic Pebbles who had kind of like had it out for me. And didn't really want to come out and like admit that JonTron was being racist, but he kept criticizing me like very passive aggressively. So like I have a page here like Richard Lewis retweeted these 3 things: how to debate like Destiny, talk really fast, do it on home turf, profit. And then he retweets because this Chris Reagan guy jumped into the animator shit. Fucking animators / artists doing what they love for a living. Scum. Now, excuse me, I'm off to stream hours of other people's art for money, right? Okay. And then Richard Lewis retweets this, and then Shoe on Head, another one of the skeptic community people, beg to debate even if you don't really disagree with the person. If the person does not accept, automatically declare victory. I think this had to do with something that where I asked somebody to come on and talk who was disagreeing with me, right? There's another thing that Richard Lewis retweeted, right? So obviously he's pretty fucking mad at me, right? And it got to a point to where I think I linked some of the conversations like, holy fuck, Richard Lewis, when he starts going on Twitter, dude, he's got to argue with every single... He reminds me of me like 5 years ago. He's got to talk to every single fucking person on Twitter. He does that same thing where he makes the excuse, I think JonTron conflated culture and race and said a bunch of dumb shit. Same as you said dumb shit in the past. I like the false equivalency. He refused to admit that JonTron was making racist comments. I think many times he used the term white when he meant American because he was struggling in the arena. But basically, me and Richard Lewis get into this big tiff, and then, you know, I'm on stream talking, and I say something along the lines of, like, it makes me really sad that, you know, I see all these people kind of defending this white nationalist rhetoric, and they won't even recognize it when they see it. Something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what I said. I'm sure the clip is linked in here. But Richard Lewis goes off on this. He goes fucking crazy, telling me that I'm trying to attack his job by calling him a white nationalist. He brings up that retarded, like, well, I've got black friends, or I've got, you know, colored friends, so I'm not racist, blah, blah, blah. That really bothers me. Just a bunch of fucking stupid shit. And, Destiny is deliberately trying to hurt my career and get me fired by stating I'm a white supremacist. Oh, he said he was going to go the legal route and try to, like, sue me for slander or some shit. He made the claim that I tricked JonTron into saying all the things, right? Just a bunch of dumb shit. Kind of like basically over all of this, so my bridge with Richard Lewis is completely fucking burned to the ground. I think he ends up blocking me on Twitter. He gets super ass pain over all of this. I thought that this was extra ironic. I think I included a link to a tweet where he tweets at Robert Olhin or whatever, Olhin from the previous owner of DreamHack. I'll always be here for you, brother. Don't let politics make you see enemies where there are none. You're my friend. Yeah, but anyway, Richard Lewis starts to dive into the very personal attacks and whatnot. I think he was saying that, like, I was, like, hanging off his teat when we met in Vegas and shit because he invited me up to his room and got me, like, a pizza. I don't know, dude. That whole thing with Richard Lewis was really, really disappointing. In terms of, like, dealing with this, I'm not really too sure what I could have done differently here. Maybe I could have had a direct conversation with him, although he kept saying he didn't want to talk to me directly, I don't think. I don't really know. There's not too much lost here, I guess. If he really wants to, like, cut out me completely because I'm criticizing him for not being critical of JonTron's beliefs, I have no problem with that. Yeah, I don't know. I consider Richard Lewis to be pretty politically dishonest. He's very right-leaning. I'm using a political label there, but, like, a lot of right-leaning ideas he kind of supports. You know, he's big on the deep state thing and the Breitbart and the InfoWars and all that shit. Maybe not InfoWars, but yeah. So I don't know. I'm not too bothered by most of that. That's kind of like a summary of the main events, I guess. The takeaway, or not the takeaway, there was one more kind of broad topic that I wanted to talk about. I feel like this video is really disorganized for YouTube. I suck at this YouTube shit. I'll break these down better in the future in terms of in terms of making multiple videos, having these more structured. I'm just kind of like reading off of an outline. One thing that I noticed that was very kind of a very interesting phenomenon to me was that there's like a big propaganda amplifier from a lot of the more prominent people in the community. I hear, like, the propaganda is very, very, very effective. So Naked Ape made a hit piece video about me. Half of it was probably bullshit. The other half is, like, taken out of context, right? I've noticed that when people make hit pieces about me or enact propaganda about me, I see that echo very effectively across a multitude of platforms. So on Reddit, Kotaku in Action, on Poll, right, and 4chan, on Twitter, and people coming to my chat room and YouTube videos to shitpost, right? So, like, here's insults that I've seen a lot, right? You are a communist. You don't believe anything is happening in Europe. You encouraged your friend to commit suicide. You support incest and pedophilia. You don't think white people should have a voice. You want to go to war with Mexico. You think Mexicans run Silicon Valley. You're a dirty debater who only gish gallops. You're going to murder somebody. You'll DMCA everybody. I noticed a lot of these kinds of arguments come out because people will, like, watch the Naked Ape video or watch like Sargon clips, and then all of a sudden I'll see that kind of messaging reverberating through all of these communities of people that dislike me, and I think that's really interesting, you know. because, you know, it shows you how powerful, like, a single, like, I hear a lot of people throw me that, like, you want to go carpet bomb Mexico argument. I'm like, I've never argued for that. This is the dumbest thing I've fucking heard in my life. But a lot of people love you that. I can go on my Twitter right now in the past 10 mentions, and I had a guy claiming, like, aren't you the guy who wanted to go bomb Mexico? We're like, no, not at all. It sounds pretty fucking stupid, don't you think? I thought that kind of, like, propaganda machine is really interesting in the way that works. Oof. Yeah, I meant to do this summary like a month or two ago, but I spent a lot of time kind of analyzing these, thinking about these. I've kind of put off making this video, distancing myself more from the events, thinking about recent debates. I'm just trying to take all of this information, you know, kind of understand everything that happened. I'm trying to understand the mistakes that I've made, right? The ways that I could have communicated with people better to clearly communicate an idea, to avoid miscommunications, to avoid people mischaracterizing what I'm saying, and to just kind of be more clear in my messaging so that I have so that I'm able to kind of further my two goals more, right? I want more people to think logically. I want more people to have discussions about ideas rooted in reality, right? And basically kind of, you know, this kind of review on this, you know, I'm kind of making a video for you guys, but I've done a lot of internal review. I hope that over the course of my next few discussions with people, I hope that you kind of see, you know, somewhat of a change. Like, oh, yeah, like Destiny's not getting as upset anymore. Destiny's trying very calmly to explain his point of view. He's done a good job understanding his opponent's point of view, right? I hope that these kinds of things, you know, manifest themselves in my future discussions so that all of this wasn't for naught, right? I'm probably going to be trying to do, now that I finally made this video, I'll probably be trying to do more politically related content in the future. I'll try to reach out to people that are around my size, maybe a little smaller, maybe a little bigger, you know, to kind of move ourselves around the YouTube sphere. Maybe we'll try to take on some of the skeptics and some of the things that they say, but yeah. This is a lot to record. Yeah, I guess go ahead and tell me your general thoughts on things. You can leave them in the comments. I read all my comments. We'll see. I'm probably gonna, if you haven't noticed already, I'm like permanently removing the people on the channel that are making the Destiny really lost that debate meme. It was a funny meme, and I left it going for a while, but we're like 3 months out, and people are still spamming it on every video. So if you see that getting removed, don't get too butthurt about it. But yeah, I love you guys. Thanks for sticking with me. I'll probably have that Patreon up pretty soon so that I can get more dirty YouTube money and maybe spend more of my time on the political side of things. But yeah, thanks a lot. I love you guys. I will catch you on the next debate. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.